You've ruined our lives. Everything we worked for, gone because of your selfishness. Those were the words my father, Gerald, said to me across the Christmas dinner table at exactly 8:47 p.m., December 25th. Not privately. Not in a moment of heated argument. But deliberately, loudly, in front of my two brothers, my mother, my aunt and uncle, and even my grandmother who had flown in from Arizona. The turkey was still steaming on the table. My niece was coloring in the corner. Bing Crosby was playing softly in the background. And my father looked me dead in the eye and told me I had destroyed them. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I didn't cry. I didn't defend myself. I didn't even raise my voice. I just set down my fork, folded my napkin carefully beside my plate, and said 5 words that would change everything. Then I'll stop the payments. The room went silent. Not the comfortable kind. The kind where you can hear someone's breath catch in their throat. My mother's wine glass paused halfway to her lips. My older brother, Trevor, looked up from his phone for the first time all evening. And my father, for just a split second, looked like he'd been slapped. What payments? My younger brother, Dante, asked, confused. I smiled. Not cruelly, just calmly. The $6,000 I've been sending every month for the last 4 years. See, here's what nobody at that table knew except my father and I. When my parents' mortgage went into foreclosure back in 2020, when their credit cards maxed out and the bank threatened to take the house my childhood memories were built in, I was the one who stepped in. Not Trevor with his finance degree and his downtown condo. Not Dante with his startup dreams funded by Dad's retirement account. Me. The daughter who was told she'd never amount to much because I chose social work over law school. I refinanced their mortgage under my name. My credit. My income. My signature on every single page. And for 4 years, I had been quietly paying $6,000 every single month to keep that roof over their heads. They made me promise not to tell my brothers because, and I quote, they'll think we're charity cases. So I kept the secret. I worked extra shifts at the crisis center. I took on weekend consulting projects. I gave up vacations, delayed buying my own home, postponed my entire life because family takes care of family. That's what I was raised to believe. But apparently, keeping their home wasn't enough. Apparently, not being able to afford flying home for Thanksgiving because I'd just sent them November's payment meant I was selfish. Apparently, missing my mother's birthday lunch because I was working overtime to cover their December mortgage meant I didn't care about family anymore. And apparently, after 4 years of bleeding myself dry to protect their pride, I had somehow ruined their lives. My father tried to recover. Sweetheart, let's not discuss finances at dinner. No, I said, standing up from the table. Let's discuss it. You want to know what's selfish, Dad? Selfish is telling your daughter she's the problem while she's the only reason you still have this house. Selfish is making me lie to my brothers about why I can never afford anything while you complain about me not contributing to family events. Selfish is blaming me for ruining your life when I gave up 4 years of mine to save it. My mother finally spoke. Natalie, please sit down. I'm not finished, I said, my voice steady, controlled. I've been paying your mortgage since March 2020. Every single month. $6,000. That's $288,000 over 4 years. I didn't ask you to pay me back. I didn't ask you to thank me. I just asked you to stop treating me like I'm the disappointment of the family. And tonight, in front of everyone, you told me I ruined your lives. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I had already pulled up the mortgage account before dinner, some instinct telling me I might need it. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go home tonight, and first thing tomorrow morning, I'm calling the bank. I'm removing myself as the primary on this mortgage. You'll have 30 days to refinance under your own names or sell the house. I'm done. You can't do that, Trevor said, suddenly very interested in the conversation. Actually, I replied, I can. It's my loan. My name. My credit. And unlike you, Trevor, I actually read the paperwork before I signed it. There's a cosigner release clause. I'd been eligible to remove myself for 2 years. I just never did because I thought eventually you'd see me. Really see me. My grandmother, bless her, was the only one who spoke with anything resembling sense. Gerald, what have you done? But I didn't wait for his answer. I grabbed my coat from the rack by the door, picked up the pie I'd brought that no one had touched, and walked out into the cold December night. The Christmas lights on the neighbors' houses blurred slightly as I got into my car, but I wasn't crying from sadness. I was crying from relief. The email was simple, professional, and devastating. Dear Ms. Huang, I am writing to formally request immediate removal as the primary borrower on the mortgage account ending in 4782 for the property located at 3340 Meadowbrook Lane. As outlined in Section 12.4 of the loan agreement, I am eligible for co-signer release after 24 months of consistent payment history, which I have exceeded. Please find attached 48 months of payment records, all made exclusively from my personal accounts, current financial statements showing my assets have been depleted by this obligation, documentation that the property owners, Gerald and Ruth Pemberton, have sufficient income to assume the loan independently, a formal statement that I no longer wish to be financially responsible for this property. I am requesting this release be processed by January 15, 2024. Per the loan terms, the remaining borrowers will need to refinance or satisfy the loan within 30 days of my removal. I have consulted with legal counsel and am prepared to proceed with all necessary steps. Respectfully, Natalie Pemberton. My cursor hovered over the send button. This wasn't just removing my name from paperwork. This was pulling the keystone from an arch. Without my income, my credit score, and my payment history, the bank would reassess the loan. My parents' income was decent, my father's pension and my mother's part-time bookkeeping business together brought in maybe $78,000 a year, but their credit was still damaged from the 2020 near foreclosure. Their debt-to-income ratio was terrible. They wouldn't qualify for a refinance at a decent rate, if they qualified at all. They'd have to sell. Or somehow come up with 4 years of savings they didn't have because they'd been spending like I'd be their safety net forever. I thought about that moment at dinner. You've ruined our lives. I thought about the 4 years of extra shifts, the declined wedding invitations because I couldn't afford a gift, the romantic relationship that ended because he wanted someone who could actually build a future, not just tread water. I thought about my grandmother's face. The only person at that table who looked at me with something other than expectation or disappointment. I clicked send. The email left my outbox at 1:47 a.m. on December 26th. There was no dramatic whoosh sound, no confirmation beyond a simple message sent notification. But sitting there in my quiet apartment, I felt something shift. Not in the room, but inside my chest, like a door that had been wedged shut for years had finally, quietly, opened. I forwarded the sent email to Simone with a short note, "It's done." Her response came through 3 minutes later, even though it was nearly 2 a.m., "Good. Now forward me every guilt trip message they send. We're documenting everything. Proud of you, Nat." I wasn't finished. I opened another browser tab and logged into the family iCloud account, the one my mother had added me to years ago so we could share photos. She'd forgotten I had access. I scrolled through the shared albums: Bahamas Cruise 2023, new furniture, Trevor's Miami trip, Dante's new studio setup. Hundreds of photos of a family living comfortably while I paid for the privilege. I didn't download them out of anger. I downloaded them as evidence. Evidence that they weren't struggling. Evidence that this wasn't about survival, it was about convenience. Evidence that I was never helping them recover, I was just subsidizing a lifestyle they felt entitled to. I created a new folder on my desktop: Financial Documentation, Pemberton Mortgage. Inside went everything: emails, bank statements, payment records, and yes, those photos. Simone said we might need them if things got ugly. If they tried to claim I'd abandoned them in crisis or paint me as the villain publicly. I wasn't planning for war. I was just refusing to be defenseless. By 3:30 a.m., I had completed 5 more tasks. Changed my direct deposit to route my entire paycheck to a new account at a different bank, one my parents had never been connected to. Removed myself from the shared family calendar where my mother tracked everyone's schedules. Updated my emergency contact at work from Gerald Pemberton, father, to Simone Reed, attorney. Set up automatic email filters that would archive anything from my parents' addresses into a folder for Simone's review. Ordered a credit freeze on all 3 bureaus, just in case. These weren't dramatic gestures. They were practical ones. The kind you make when you realize someone's been living in your financial house without permission, and you're finally changing the locks. My phone had stopped buzzing around 2 a.m. Either they'd given up for the night, or they'd realized I wasn't going to respond. The silence was strange at first, then peaceful, then finally, liberating. I made myself another cup of tea, this time actually drinking it while it was hot. I sat by my window and watched the snow begin to fall over the city. Somewhere across town, my parents were probably awake too, strategizing, panicking, or possibly still convincing themselves I was bluffing. But I wasn't bluffing. I was just done. The bank would receive my request first thing after the holiday closure ended. Catherine would process it according to protocol. The 30-day countdown would begin. And for the first time in 4 years, their financial crisis would be exactly what it should have been from the beginning. Theirs to solve. Not mine. I finished my tea, closed my laptop, and finally went to bed at 4:17 a.m. I slept for exactly 5 hours and woke up feeling something I hadn't felt since March 2020. Free. The bank reopened on December 27th. Catherine Huang called me at 9:43 a.m., exactly 14 minutes after I knew she would have seen my email. "Ms. Pemberton," she said, her voice professionally neutral but with an edge of surprise. "I received your cosigner release request. I have to say, in 15 years of mortgage processing, I've never seen documentation this thorough for a family loan situation. I wanted to make sure there were no delays," I replied, sitting at my desk at the crisis center, my office door closed. "There won't be," she confirmed. "Your payment history is impeccable. Your income documentation is solid. Frankly, you've been carrying this loan almost entirely on your own according to the payment sources. I'll need to schedule a property appraisal and reassess the remaining borrower's qualifications, but your release should be processed within 2 weeks, not the full 30 days. 2 weeks. Faster than I'd anticipated. What happens to the other borrowers?" I asked, though I already knew. Catherine paused, choosing her words carefully. "They'll be notified that the primary income qualified borrower has requested release. They'll have the option to refinance under their own qualifications or satisfy the remaining loan balance, based on the property value and their income documentation from the original file." She trailed off professionally. "They won't qualify," I finished for her. "I didn't say that," Catherine replied diplomatically. "But they'll likely face significantly different terms than what you secured for them. Higher interest rate, possibly a shorter term, definitely more stringent income verification. And if they can't refinance? Then the loan becomes due in full within 90 days of your official release, or they'll need to sell the property." I thanked her and hung up. Then I waited. The first call came at 11:17 a.m. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. "Natalie, sweetheart, please call me back. There's been some kind of mistake with the bank. They're saying you requested to be removed from the house. That can't be right. Please, honey, call me. This is serious." The word mistake almost made me laugh. There was no mistake. There was only consequence. The second call came at 11:45 a.m. My father. Also sent to voicemail. "Natalie Grace Pemberton, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to call the bank and fix this immediately. Catherine Huang just informed me that they're reassessing our loan qualification because you filed some kind of release form. This is not how family handles disagreements. Call me back. Now." The use of my full name, the command, the entitlement, it was exactly what I'd expected. The third call came at 12:33 p.m. Trevor. I almost answered this one out of curiosity, but decided against it. Nat, it's Trevor. Look, I don't know what happened at Christmas dinner, I wasn't really paying attention, but Mom just called me crying. She says you're pulling out of the house loan? That's insane. That house is worth like $680,000 now. You're going to tank Mom and Dad's equity over some family drama? Come on. Be reasonable. Call me back. Ah, there it was. He hadn't even known I was the one paying the mortgage, and now suddenly he was an expert on equity and reasonableness. The fourth call came at 1:52 p.m. Dante. His voicemail was shorter, confused. Hey sis, what's going on? Mom's freaking out about the house. Did you really tell the bank to cancel the mortgage or something? That seems extreme. Can you just, I don't know, talk to them? This is really stressing everyone out. Stressing everyone out. For years of financial stress that I carried alone, and now they were stressed after less than 3 hours of consequences. By 3 p.m., I had 17 missed calls total and 12 text messages. I read each one carefully, taking screenshots and forwarding them to Simone as she'd instructed. From Mom, please don't do this. We can talk about Christmas. Your father didn't mean what he said. From Dad, you're making a massive mistake. This will affect your credit too if the loan defaults. From Trevor, do you have any idea what this will do to their retirement? Selfish doesn't even begin to cover it. From Dante, I always thought you were the reasonable one. That last one stung more than I wanted to admit, but I didn't respond. At 4:47 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Local area code. I answered. Natalie Pemberton? A man's voice, older, formal. Speaking. This is Howard Westfield. I'm a financial advisor. Your parents have been clients of mine for about 6 months. They've asked me to reach out to you regarding a mortgage situation. I almost hung up, but curiosity won. What did they tell you? They explained that there was a family misunderstanding and that you've requested to be removed from their home loan, which is causing some complications. I've reviewed their financial portfolio, and I believe we can find a solution that works for everyone. Would you be willing to meet with all of us? Tomorrow perhaps? Mr. Westfield, I said calmly, did my parents tell you that I've been paying their entire mortgage for 4 years? That's $288,000 out of my personal income while they hired a financial advisor and went on cruises? Silence. I see, he said slowly. That was not included in the information they provided. I didn't think so. I have no interest in a meeting. My decision is final. Have a good day. I hung up and immediately texted Simone. They've escalated to hiring a financial advisor to guilt me. His name is Howard Westfield. Her response was instant. Document everything. Don't meet with anyone without me present. They're in panic mode. She was right. This wasn't just panic. This was full-scale crisis management on their end. At 6:14 p.m., my grandmother called. This one I answered. Nana, I said softly. Sweet girl, she replied, her voice warm but tired. I'm not calling to change your mind. I'm calling because I want you to know I'm proud of you. I felt my throat tighten. You are? Your father called me this morning, hysterical. Saying you'd betrayed the family, that you were being vindictive, that you'd ruined them financially. So I asked him one simple question. How much has Natalie been paying? He tried to dodge, but I pressed. When he finally told me, I told him he should be ashamed of himself. What did he say? That I didn't understand the full situation. So I told him I understood perfectly. I understood that my granddaughter sacrificed her 20s to save his pride, and he repaid her with public humiliation. I also told him that if he keeps harassing you, he can find somewhere else to celebrate next Christmas. I actually laughed, surprising myself. Nana, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do. Someone in this family needs to have a spine, and apparently, I'm the only one besides you. How are you holding up, really? Honestly? I paused, looking around my small apartment, the space I'd been too financially drained to properly furnish. I feel lighter than I have in years. Good. That's exactly how you should feel. Now listen, they're going to try everything. Guilt, anger, negotiation, maybe even threats. Don't you cave. You hear me? I won't. I know you won't. You're stronger than all of them. You always have been. We talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important, recipes and weather and her book club. When we hung up, I realized it was the first phone conversation in 4 years where someone from my family had asked how I was doing without following it up with a request. At 8:03 p.m., my phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line made my pulse quicken: urgent, family emergency. It was from my mother, sent to me, Trevor, Dante, and several extended family members I barely kept in touch with. The email read: Dear family. It is with a heavy heart that I must inform you of a serious situation affecting our family. Due to circumstances beyond our control, we are at risk of losing our family home, the house where we raised our children and hosted countless memories. Natalie has made the decision to remove her name from our mortgage without warning, which has put us in a very difficult position financially. We are reaching out to family to see if anyone might be able to help us navigate this crisis, either through financial assistance or by speaking with Natalie to help her understand the severity of what this means for our future. We are not asking for judgment, only support during this incredibly difficult time. Any help or prayers would be appreciated. With love and hope, Ruth and Gerald. I read it 3 times, each time feeling a different emotion. First shock at the audacity. Then anger at the manipulation. Finally, something close to pity at how desperate they'd become. They'd sent it to my Aunt Lydia, who I saw once every 2 years. My Uncle Paul, who I'd met exactly twice at weddings. My second cousin Monica, who I was pretty sure didn't even remember my name. They were building a narrative. Poor Gerald and Ruth, victims of their ungrateful daughter. It was a strategic move, trying to apply social pressure through extended family. I forwarded the email to Simone with the subject line, "They've gone public." Her response came within minutes: "Perfect. This is evidence of harassment and reputational damage. Don't respond. Let me handle this." At 9:27 p.m., Simone sent a reply all to the family email chain. I hadn't asked her to, but I wasn't surprised. She was a lawyer who believed in preemptive strikes. Dear Pemberton family. My name is Simone Reed, and I am Natalie Pemberton's legal counsel. I am responding to this email to provide clarification on the situation described. Natalie has not acted without warning or created any crisis. She has exercised her legal right to remove herself from a loan that she has single-handedly paid for 4 consecutive years, totaling $288,000 in payments. This decision was made after being publicly told she had ruined their lives at a family gathering, despite her extraordinary financial sacrifice. Any further emails, calls, or attempts to pressure Natalie through family members will be documented as harassment. Ruth and Gerald Pemberton have multiple options to refinance or sell the property. Their financial situation is not Natalie's responsibility to resolve. We respectfully request that this matter remain private between the immediate parties involved. Best regards, Simone Reed, ESQ. My phone started ringing within seconds. I didn't answer. Not my mother, not Trevor, not the 3 relatives who suddenly had my number. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine, ordered Thai food delivery, and pulled up a document I'd been working on for weeks but never thought I'd actually use. It was titled, "What Happens Next, A Plan." Inside was everything. Job applications to crisis centers in other cities, places where I could start fresh. A budget based on my actual income without the $6,000 monthly drain. A timeline for saving for my own home, realistically, within 18 months. A list of things I'd been putting off: dental work, a proper winter coat, a vacation to visit my college roommate in Portland. For the first time in 4 years, I was planning for my future instead of funding theirs. My phone buzzed one final time that night at 11:52 p.m. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Trevor. Mom gave me your new number. We need to talk. This is bigger than you understand. Call me." I blocked the number and fell asleep with my ringer off for the first time in years, not worried about missing an emergency call from family. Because their emergency was no longer mine to solve. You don't grow up as the responsible child without learning that praise is conditional. My earliest memory of understanding my role in the family was at 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table while my mother balanced the checkbook. She was stressed, snapping at my father about overdraft fees, and I had quietly brought her a cup of tea I'd made myself, carefully, the way she liked it. She'd looked at me with such relief and said, "You're my little helper, aren't you? Not like your brothers. You actually think about other people." I had glowed under that attention. I had found my value. Trevor was born first, which meant he got to be the golden child by default. The one Dad took to basketball games and talked about with pride. The one who could mess up repeatedly and still be called ambitious and finding his way. When Trevor crashed Dad's car at 16, it was, boys will be boys. When he dropped out of college after 2 years, it was, he's figuring out his path. Dante came 4 years after me, the surprise baby, and he got to be the creative one. The artistic soul who needed understanding and space. When Dante couldn't hold a job, it was because he was too talented for conventional work. When he needed money, which was often, it was investing in his future. And me? I was the steady one. The responsible one. The one who didn't need attention because I already had everything figured out. Except I didn't have anything figured out. I was just afraid that if I wasn't useful, I'd disappear completely. My father, Gerald Pemberton, worked in industrial manufacturing management for 33 years. He believed in hierarchy, efficiency, and the idea that emotions were obstacles to good decision-making. He ran our household the way he ran his team meetings, with clear expectations, measurable outcomes, and very little room for questions. "We don't raise complainers," he used to say. "We raise problem solvers." Which really meant, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And don't expect comfort when you're struggling, expect a lecture on resilience. My mother, Ruth, was softer in presentation but harder in practice. She was the kind of woman who volunteered at church, hosted book clubs, and always remembered everyone's birthday. But beneath that warm exterior was a woman who had learned early that keeping peace meant managing everyone's emotions except her own. She was the negotiator. The one who smoothed over Dad's harsh words with, "You know he doesn't mean it that way," and, "He's just stressed from work." She was also the one who taught me that being accommodating was the same as being loved. "Natalie, can you just let it go? You know how your father gets. Natalie, don't make things harder. Trevor's going through something. Natalie, be the bigger person. You're so good at that." I learned young that, being good at it, meant I'd be expected to do it forever. The pattern started small. At 12, I was babysitting Dante every day after school while Mom worked part-time and Trevor did sports. At 15, I was tutoring Trevor in math so he wouldn't fail junior year, unpaid, every Tuesday and Thursday night. At 17, I was the one who planned Mom's surprise 40th birthday party because, "You're just so organized, honey." I didn't mind at first. I liked being needed. I liked being the one people could count on. But somewhere along the way, being dependable became being invisible. My accomplishments were expected, not celebrated. When I graduated high school with honors, Dad said, "Good. That's what you're supposed to do." When Trevor barely graduated, we threw him a party. I went to state college on a partial scholarship, working 20 hours a week at a campus bookstore to cover the rest. Trevor went to a private university for 2 years before dropping out, fully funded by Dad's savings. When I asked Dad once why the difference, he said, "You don't need the same kind of support. You've always been self-sufficient." Self-sufficient. Another word for overlooked. I majored in social work because I wanted to help people, and because it felt like the only thing I was actually good at, fixing problems that weren't mine. My father hated it. You could have been a lawyer. A doctor. Something that actually pays. Instead, you're going to make $30,000 a year listening to people complain. But I stuck with it. Got my degree. Got a job at Riverside Crisis Center in our city, working with families in emergency situations. The irony wasn't lost on me later that I spent my days helping strangers navigate financial and family crises while ignoring my own. I was good at my job. Really good. Within 3 years I was a senior counselor. Within 5, I was managing our youth intervention program. I wasn't making a fortune, $52,000 a year when the mortgage crisis started, but I was stable. I had good credit. I had savings. I had built something entirely my own. And then March 2020 happened. Not the pandemic, though that didn't help. March 2020 was when my father called me on a Wednesday afternoon, his voice tight in a way I'd only heard a few times in my life. "Natalie, I need you to come to the house tonight. Don't tell your brothers. Just come." I went. Of course I went. They sat me down at the dining room table, the same table where, 4 years later, I'd be told I ruined their lives. My mother's eyes were red. My father's jaw was clenched. "We're going to lose the house," he said. No preamble. No softening. "The bank has started foreclosure. We've missed 4 payments. We're 60 days from losing everything." I was stunned. "How? You both work. The house has been paid on for 20 years, you should be almost done." "We refinanced," my mother said quietly. 3 years ago. We took equity out to help Trevor start his consulting business and to pay off some credit cards. Trevor's consulting business that lasted 8 months and generated exactly 0 income. "And then Dad's company did layoffs last year," Mom continued. "He took a pay cut to keep his position. We've been using credit cards to cover the gap, and now..." She gestured helplessly at a stack of papers on the table. I looked at the foreclosure notice. The amount due. The property value. The mess of medical bills, credit card statements, and final notices. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" I asked. "Why didn't you ask for help sooner?" "We thought we could fix it ourselves," Dad said, and for the first time in my life, he looked small. "We didn't want the boys to worry. And we didn't want to burden you. But here we are," I thought. "Burdening me anyway." "We need someone to refinance the house under their name," Dad said. "Someone with good credit and stable income. The bank said if we can get a co-signer, someone who qualifies, they'll work with us. Trevor's credit is shot from some business debts. Dante doesn't have any credit history. You're the only one who can do this." I should have asked more questions. I should have asked why Trevor's business debts were their problem. I should have asked why they'd refinanced without a real plan. I should have asked what "working with us" actually meant in terms of who'd be paying. But I didn't. Because my mother was crying, and my father was looking at me with something that almost resembled respect, and I was 26 years old, still desperate to be the daughter they were proud of. "How much?" I asked. "The new loan would be $4,200 a month," Dad said. "But we'll pay it. You just be the primary name for qualification purposes. Just until we get back on our feet. 2 years, tops. 2 years, tops." The lie I would cling to for the next 48 months. "We'll pay you back," Mom added quickly. "Every penny you put in, we'll pay back once Dad's salary recovers." I wanted to believe them. I needed to believe them. "Okay," I said. "I'll do it." The relief on their faces was immediate, overwhelming. My mother hugged me. My father shook my hand, formal, grateful. "You're saving us," he said. "You're saving this family." I drove home that night feeling like a hero. Like I'd finally done something that mattered. Like maybe this was my chance to be seen the way Trevor was seen, the way Dante was seen. It took exactly 3 months for that feeling to die. The first payment came out of my account in June 2020. $6,000 total, $4,200 for the mortgage, $800 for property tax escrow, $1,000 for HOA fees they'd forgotten to mention. I'd agreed to cover it, temporarily, while they sorted out Dad's salary situation. Then July. August. September. By October, I asked when they'd be ready to start contributing. Dad said his salary still hadn't recovered. Mom said they were working on it. Just a few more months, sweetheart. By December, I asked if they'd considered downsizing, selling the house and moving somewhere more affordable. The reaction was immediate and harsh. "This is our home," Dad said. "We're not selling. We raised you here. This is your inheritance." Inheritance. The word was supposed to make me feel grateful. Instead, it made me feel trapped. I kept paying. January. February. March. 1 year became 2. My savings account, which had held $43,000 when I signed those papers, dwindled to $8,000. Then $3,000. Then nothing. I picked up weekend consulting work with a nonprofit across the state. I taught crisis intervention workshops for extra income. I stopped going out with friends because I couldn't afford drinks. I stopped dating because I couldn't afford dinners. Meanwhile, Trevor bought a new car. Dante moved into a trendy loft downtown, rent covered by Mom and Dad, just until his design work picks up. My parents took a cruise to celebrate their 30th anniversary. When I asked about the cruise, Dad said, "We got a great deal. Sometimes you have to invest in your mental health." I was eating pasta for the 6th night in a row. The breaking point should have come earlier. It should have come when they removed me from family planning conversations because I was too stressed about money to think clearly. It should have come when Trevor asked me why I was always so uptight about finances, completely unaware that I was paying for the roof over our parents' heads. But it didn't break then. It broke on Christmas, after 4 years of invisible labor, when my father looked at me across a table full of people I'd sacrificed for and told me I'd ruined their lives. 4 years of payments. 4 years of working myself to exhaustion. 4 years of putting my entire life on hold. And somehow, I was the selfish one. The file on my laptop, the one I'd labeled Redemption Plan 3 weeks earlier, held every receipt, every bank transfer, every email where they'd promised just a few more months. It held screenshots of their vacation photos while my bank account showed overdraft fees. It held the truth they'd asked me to keep quiet about so my brothers wouldn't think less of them. And now that truth was about to become everyone's problem. Because I wasn't the family savior anymore. I was just the daughter who finally learned that being useful and being valued are not the same thing. The real turning point hadn't been Christmas dinner. It had been 3 weeks earlier, on a Tuesday afternoon that felt like any other Tuesday until it wasn't. I'd gone to the house to drop off some documents my mother needed for her bookkeeping client, tax forms she'd asked me to pick up from the accountant because she didn't have time. It was always small favors like that, little errands that individually meant nothing but collectively kept me tethered to their needs. I let myself in with the key I'd had since high school. The house was quiet. Mom wasn't home yet. I walked through the living room and stopped. New furniture. A complete set, leather sectional sofa in charcoal gray, matching armchairs, a coffee table that looked like it cost more than my monthly groceries. I stood there, documents still in hand, doing math in my head. That sectional alone was probably $4,000. Maybe more. I'd sent them November's mortgage payment 6 days earlier. $6,000 from an account that had $6,400 in it. I walked into the kitchen. New appliances. Not all of them, but the refrigerator was different, stainless steel and massive, with the water dispenser on the door. The microwave above the stove was new too. My hand started shaking, just slightly. I pulled out my phone and opened the family cloud photo album, the one Mom used to share pictures. I scrolled back through the last 6 months. There it was. New furniture day, posted 2 weeks ago. Kitchen upgrades, finally, posted last month. Photos of my mother and father smiling in front of their renovated space. I'd been eating rice and canned beans for dinner while they remodeled. I left the documents on the counter and walked out. I didn't say anything to my mother when she called later asking if I'd dropped them off. I just said yes and hung up. That night, I called Simone. Simone Reed and I met in grad school, back when I was getting my master's in social work and she was finishing her law degree. We'd been in an ethics seminar together, the kind of class where you debate impossible scenarios and learn that right and wrong are often separated by context and power. We'd stayed friends through the years, meeting for coffee every few months, texting about work frustrations and dating disasters. She knew about my family, knew I was helping with something financial, but I'd never told her the full scope because I was ashamed. Ashamed that I was drowning. Ashamed that I couldn't say no. Simone, I said when she answered. I need legal advice. As a friend first, but maybe as a lawyer second. What's going on? I told her everything. The refinance. The 4 years of payments. The promises that it was temporary. The cruise, the furniture, the way they'd slowly edited me out of family decisions while keeping me locked into financial responsibility. She was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Nat, she finally said, her voice careful. Are you protecting them, or are they using you? The question landed like a physical weight. I don't know, I whispered. Yes, you do, she said gently. You know. You just don't want to admit it because admitting it means accepting that the people who are supposed to love you have been exploiting you for years. I started crying then, silently, sitting on my apartment floor with my back against the couch. Can I get out? I asked. Legally, can I remove myself from the loan? Let me see the paperwork, she said. Send me everything. The original mortgage, the refinance documents, payment records, anything you have. I'll review it tonight. I sent her 17 files within the hour. She called me back at 11 p.m. You can get out, she said. There's a cosigner release clause in the loan agreement. It's not common, but it's there. After 24 months of consistent on-time payments from the primary borrower, you can request release if you meet certain criteria. You're past the 48-month mark now. You're more than eligible. What happens to them? The bank reassesses the loan based on the remaining borrower's qualifications. If your parents don't qualify on their own, which based on what you've told me they probably won't, they'll have to refinance elsewhere at current rates, sell the property, or pay off the loan in full. They can't do any of those things. That's not your problem, Nat. That's theirs. They're adults who made financial decisions. You've been subsidizing their lifestyle for 4 years. That was generous. It was also unsustainable, and they knew it. They'll hate me. They might. But ask yourself this, do they love you now, or do they love what you provide? I didn't have an answer for that. Think about it, Simone said. I'll draft the release paperwork. You don't have to file it. But you should have it ready. Just in case. Just in case became 3 weeks later at Christmas dinner. After that phone call with Simone, I started documenting everything. Not out of malice, but out of self-preservation. I'd spent 4 years being the solution to their problems. I needed to understand the full scope of what I'd been solving. I created a spreadsheet tracking every payment I'd made. Date, amount, account it came from. Then I added another column, their visible spending. This required more digging. I still had view-only access to the family bank account from when I'd helped them set up online banking back in 2019. They'd never removed me. I started taking screenshots, monthly, of their transactions. What I found made the furniture and appliances look minor. In the 4 years since I'd taken over their mortgage, they'd spent $8,400 on the Bahamas cruise. $11,200 on furniture and appliances. $6,700 on various loans, to Trevor for his failed business ventures. $4,300 on supporting Dante's design studio setup. $3,800 on dining out, an average of $80 per week. $2,400 on a timeshare presentation trip to Arizona they'd called a getaway. That was $36,800 in discretionary spending while I paid their mandatory expenses. I wasn't angry, not exactly. I was just tired. Tired of being the responsible one. Tired of sacrificing so they could be comfortable. Tired of the dissonance between their words and their actions. They said they were struggling. Their spending said they were fine. They said it was temporary. For years said it was permanent. They said family takes care of family. But only I was doing the taking care of. I started pulling other records too. Emails where my father had promised, "We'll start contributing next month." Texts from my mother saying, "Just until we get through this rough patch." Messages from Trevor asking to borrow money that I declined because I didn't have it to lend, money I would have had if I weren't paying their mortgage. There were 43 separate instances over 4 years where they'd promised to start helping with payments. 43 times they'd pushed it back. I organized everything into a folder structure: payment records, communication history, evidence of financial stability, legal documents. I backed it up in 3 places. I wasn't planning to use it, I told myself. I just needed to know I had it. Simone sent me the draft release paperwork on December 10th, 2 weeks before Christmas. "You don't have to file this," she wrote in the email. "But read through it. Understand what your options are. You're not trapped, Nat. You've never been trapped. You've been loyal. There's a difference." I read through the paperwork a dozen times. It was surprisingly simple. A formal request to the bank, documentation of my payment history, proof of my financial qualification, and a statement that I was voluntarily removing myself as the primary borrower. The bank would process it, reassess the remaining borrowers, and either approve a refinance under their names or demand full payment within 90 days. It was a nuclear option. But it was an option. I saved the document as "release draft, do not file," and tried to forget about it. But I couldn't forget. Every time I logged in to make another payment, I thought about it. Every time my mother called asking for a small favor, I thought about it. Every time Trevor posted photos from expensive restaurants or Dante talked about his next creative project, I thought about it. The weekend before Christmas, my mother called asking if I could pick up the turkey from the specialty butcher on the other side of town because she was too busy with her book club's holiday party. "Sure," I said automatically, then caught myself. "Actually, Mom, I can't. I have plans." I didn't have plans. I just didn't want to drive 40 minutes round trip for a turkey. "Plans?" she said, surprised. "What plans?" "Just plans. Can Trevor or Dante get it?" Trevor's in meetings all day and Dante doesn't have a car right now. Dante didn't have a car because he'd totaled his last one and Dad had told him he needed to save up for the next one himself, a rule that would inevitably last about 3 months before they bought him another one. "Then maybe order from a closer butcher," I suggested. "But this one is where we always go. It's tradition." Tradition. Another word for obligation disguised as sentiment. "I really can't, Mom. Sorry." The silence on the other end was cold. "Fine. I'll figure it out myself." As usual. She hung up. I sat there holding my phone, that familiar guilt creeping in, the sense that I'd failed somehow. But underneath the guilt was something newer, something that felt like clarity. I opened my laptop and renamed the file from "release draft, do not file," to just "release draft." When Christmas dinner happened 5 days later, when my father said those words across the table, I wasn't surprised. I was ready. Because the truth is, you don't wake up one day and suddenly decide to set yourself free. You wake up hundreds of days in a row, feeling the weight of other people's choices pressing down on you, until finally, one moment, one comment, one last dismissal breaks something loose inside you. And then you stop asking for permission to save yourself. I had the paperwork ready. I had the documentation prepared. I had Simone on speed dial. All I needed was the final push. Gerald Pemberton gave it to me when he looked at me in front of my entire family and told me I'd ruined their lives. The lives I'd been funding for 4 years. The lives that apparently didn't include room for my dignity. I went home that night, opened the release document, filled in the date, and attached it to the email I'd already drafted to Catherine Huang at the bank. My cursor hovered over send for exactly 12 seconds. Then I clicked it. And everything that came after, the panic calls, the angry messages, the desperate family meeting, all of it was just the sound of a structure collapsing that I'd been holding up alone for far too long. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped being the foundation for people who'd convinced me that supporting them was the same as being loved. Catherine Huang called me on January 3rd with an update I'd been both expecting and dreading. Ms. Pemberton, the property appraisal is complete and I've finished the financial reassessment of the remaining borrowers, she said, her tone professional but not unkind. Your release has been approved. Effective January 15th, you will no longer be responsible for the mortgage on 3340 Meadowbrook Lane. I exhaled slowly. And my parents? They've been notified that they have until February 28th to either refinance the remaining balance under their own qualifications or satisfy the loan in full. I've sent them a list of potential lenders, though I'll be honest with you, given their current debt-to-income ratio and credit scores, their options are limited. What kind of rates are we talking about? If they can find approval, probably somewhere between 7.5% and 9.2%, significantly higher than your current 3.8% rate. Their monthly payment would likely increase to around $5,800 to $6,200, depending on the terms. That's if they qualify at all. They wouldn't. I knew they wouldn't. Their combined income was roughly $78,000 annually. Even if they qualified, $6,200 a month would consume nearly their entire take-home pay. What happens if they can't refinance? Then the loan becomes due in full by March 31st. If they can't pay, the property goes into foreclosure proceedings. Though most families in this situation choose to sell before it reaches that point. The house was worth approximately $680,000 now, according to the appraisal. They owed $542,000. After realtor fees and closing costs, they'd walk away with maybe $90,000 to $100,000. Enough for a down payment on something smaller, something they could actually afford. It wasn't ruin. It was reality. Thank you, Catherine, I said. For what it's worth, she added, I've been doing this job for a long time. What you did, taking on that mortgage for your family, that was extraordinarily generous. What they did afterward, that's on them, not you. After we hung up, I forwarded the email confirmation to Simone and then did something I hadn't done in 4 years. I opened a new browser tab and started looking at apartments. Not the small, barely affordable studios I'd been trapped in. Real apartments. 1-bedrooms with actual closet space. Places with dishwashers and balconies and parking spots. I could afford them now. Without the $6,000 monthly drain, my salary of $52,000 suddenly felt like wealth. I started a new budget spreadsheet, this one titled, My Actual Life. Rent, $1,200 utilities, $150 groceries, $400, actual groceries, not ramen and rice, car payment, $280 insurance, $180 savings, $1,500 retirement, $500 everything else, $1,140. I stared at that savings line. $1,500 a month. In 1 year, I could have $18,000 saved. In 2 years, $36,000. Enough for a down payment on my own place. Not helping someone else keep theirs. Mine. The number made me feel something I hadn't felt in so long I'd almost forgotten what it was called, hope. My phone started buzzing. A call from my mother. I let it ring through to voicemail. Natalie, we got a letter from the bank. This is serious. They're saying we have to refinance or pay the entire loan by March. We can't do that. You know we can't. Please, we need to talk about this. Call me back. Delete. A text from Trevor 30 minutes later. Mom's having a breakdown. She's talking about losing the house. Is this really what you want? To make Mom suffer? I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, Mom is an adult who made financial decisions. So am I. I'm not discussing this with you. His response was immediate, you're unbelievable. You really are that selfish. I blocked his number. An email from my father arrived that evening, the subject line in all caps, urgent, family meeting required. The body of the email read, Natalie. This situation has gone far enough. Your mother is distraught. The bank has given us an impossible timeline. We need to sit down as a family and work this out like adults. I'm proposing we meet this Saturday at 2 p.m. at Hartley's restaurant. We can discuss options calmly and rationally. I trust you'll be there. This is not a request. Dad. I forwarded it to Simone without reading it twice. Her response came back within minutes, the audacity. This is not a request. Yes, it is. You're not going to that meeting alone. If you go at all, I'm coming with you. But honestly, I'd suggest a counteroffer. You meet on your terms, your location, with me present, or you don't meet at all. She was right. They'd controlled the narrative for 4 years. Location, timing, audience, all of it designed to make me feel small and them feel justified. Not this time. I replied to my father's email. Gerald. I will meet with you and Ruth only. Not Trevor. Not Dante. Not at a restaurant. We will meet at Simone Reed's law office on Monday, January 8th at 4 p.m. Simone will be present as my legal counsel. This is a one-time meeting. If you choose not to attend, that's your decision. Natalie. I didn't call him Dad. I didn't soften it with affection I didn't feel. I stated terms. His response took 3 hours. Fine. We'll be there. The day before the meeting, I received a notification from my bank. A deposit for $6,000 had been made into my account from an account labeled GNR Pemberton Joint. I stared at it, confused, then angry, then something close to impressed at the manipulation. They'd sent me exactly 1 mortgage payment. After 48 months of me covering it alone, they'd sent back 1 payment like it was some kind of peace offering or proof they'd been trying all along. I took a screenshot and sent it to Simone with a message. They just deposited $6,000 into my account. What do I do? Her response, nothing. Don't touch it. Don't send it back. Document it. If they're trying to create evidence that they've been contributing, 1 payment out of 48 doesn't erase the pattern. Bring the screenshot tomorrow. That evening, Dante called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Nat? His voice was uncertain, younger sounding than usual. What do you want, Dante? I wanted to understand. Why now? Why are you doing this now? You really don't know? Mom and Dad said there was an argument at Christmas, but they won't tell me what it was about. Trevor says you're trying to teach them some kind of lesson. I just don't get it. We're family. Of course they hadn't told him the truth. Of course they'd reframed it as me being difficult rather than them being cruel. Dante, did you know I've been paying Mom and Dad's entire mortgage for 4 years? Silence. What? Their house. The one we all grew up in. I've been paying $6,000 a month for it since March 2020. That's $288,000. Did you know that? No. His voice was quiet. Why didn't you tell us? Because they asked me not to. They said they didn't want you and Trevor to think of them as charity cases. So I kept it quiet. I worked extra jobs. I gave up my savings, my social life, any chance at building my own life. And at Christmas, in front of the entire family, Dad told me I'd ruined their lives. He said that? Yes. So I stopped paying. I legally removed myself from the mortgage. That's what's happening. They have to refinance or sell. That's not me being cruel. That's me finally stopping to be a bank account they occasionally remember to be nice to. Dante was quiet for a long time. I didn't know. I swear, Nat, I didn't know any of this. I know you didn't. Because they didn't want you to know. They wanted me silent and useful. I'm done being both. What do I do? Nothing. This isn't your problem to fix. It's theirs. Are we still okay? You and me? I thought about that. Dante had never been malicious, just oblivious. Privileged by birth order and personality to never have to be the responsible one. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But I'm not angry at you. I'm just tired of being invisible. You're not invisible to me. Then prove it. Stop asking me to fix this. Stop treating Mom and Dad like victims. They're not. They're just adults facing consequences. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. We hung up, and I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, exactly, but maybe the beginning of something like it. The evening before the meeting, I laid out my outfit like I was preparing for trial. Black slacks, a burgundy blouse, my one good blazer. I printed 3 copies of everything: payment records, email chains, bank statements, the timeline of promises broken, and the single $6,000 deposit they'd made 4 days ago. Simone had prepared a summary document, clean and professional, titled Financial History, Pemberton Mortgage, March 2020 to December 2024. It was 8 pages long. Every payment. Every promise. Every deflection. All of it distilled into indisputable fact. I read through it once, then closed the folder and made myself dinner. Real dinner, grilled chicken and roasted vegetables, not because it was special but because I could finally afford to buy fresh food again. I ate slowly, looking out my apartment window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my parents were probably strategizing, planning their arguments, deciding what emotional leverage they'd try to use tomorrow. It didn't matter. I wasn't going into that meeting to be convinced or to convince. I was going to state facts, set boundaries, and walk away. For the first time in 4 years, I was walking toward my own life instead of carrying theirs. I went to bed early, set my alarm, and slept straight through for 8 hours. No anxiety dreams, no waking up at 3 a.m. in a panic. Just sleep. Deep, unburdened, free. When I woke up Monday morning, I felt something I'd almost forgotten: ready. Not for battle. Not for reconciliation. Just ready to stand in a room with the people who'd raised me to believe that loving them meant erasing myself, and calmly, clearly, prove them wrong. Simone's office was located in a renovated historic building downtown, all exposed brick and tall windows that let in cold January light. I arrived 20 minutes early, as planned. Simone met me in the lobby with 2 coffees and the kind of calm, steady presence that reminded me why I'd called her in the first place. "You ready?" she asked. "I think so. Remember, you're not here to defend yourself. You're here to state facts and set boundaries. If they get emotional, let them. You stay steady. Can you do that?" I nodded, taking the coffee. "I can do that." We went up to the 3rd floor conference room. Simone had set it up deliberately: a long table with chairs on either side, a box of tissues on a side table, water bottles, and a digital recorder positioned visibly in the center. "You're recording?" I asked. "Only if everyone consents. But the presence of it alone tends to keep people more honest. They know there's a record." At exactly 3:58 p.m., the receptionist called up. "Ms. Reed? The Pembertons are here. Send them up." My parents walked into the conference room 2 minutes later. My mother looked like she'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks, her face drawn, eyes puffy. My father looked angry, his jaw set in that familiar way that used to make me immediately apologize for whatever I'd done wrong. Not today. Natalie, my mother said, moving as if to hug me. I stayed seated. Mom. Dad. This is Simone Reed, my attorney. My father's eyes went to Simone, then to the recorder on the table. We don't need lawyers for a family conversation. I disagree, Simone said pleasantly, gesturing to the chairs across from us. Please, sit. Can I get you water? Coffee? They sat stiffly, declining both. Simone opened a leather portfolio. Before we begin, I need to inform you that I'd like to record this meeting for accuracy. Do I have your consent? No, my father said immediately. That's fine, Simone replied smoothly, turning off the recorder but leaving it visible. I'll be taking notes instead. She pulled out a legal pad and dated the top of the page with deliberate slowness. The power play was subtle but effective. My father shifted uncomfortably. Natalie, my mother started, her voice already trembling, please, can we just talk? Without all this formality. We're family. We are talking, I said calmly. What would you like to say? We want to understand why you're doing this. Why you're trying to take our home away. I'm not taking anything away. I'm removing myself from a financial obligation that was supposed to be temporary and has lasted 4 years. We've been struggling, my father interjected. You know that. We explained the situation from the beginning. Simone pulled out the first document from her folder and slid it across the table. This is a timeline of payments. Natalie has made 48 consecutive monthly payments totaling $288,000. Can you point to where your contributions are reflected? My mother picked up the paper with shaking hands, scanning it. We've been contributing in other ways. Emotional support, family dinners. Emotional support isn't a mortgage payment, Simone said, not unkindly but firmly. What monetary contributions have you made to this loan that your daughter refinanced under her name? Silence. We made a payment last week, my father said. $6,000. One payment, I said quietly. In 4 years. And only after I removed myself from the loan. That's not a pattern of contribution. That's damage control. My mother's eyes filled with tears. You're making us sound like monsters. We didn't force you to help us. You offered. You asked, I corrected. You called me panicked, told me you were losing the house, and asked if I could help. I said yes because I'm your daughter and I love you. You told me it would be temporary. 2 years, you said. It's been 4. Things took longer to recover than we expected, my father said defensively. The economy, my salary adjustments, it's been complicated. Simone pulled out another document. This is a record of your household spending over the past 4 years, compiled from the family bank account that Natalie still has view access to. Would you like to review it? My father's face went red. You were spying on us? You gave me access in 2019, I said. You never revoked it. And I wasn't spying. I was trying to understand why, if you were struggling so much, you could afford an $8,400 cruise, $11,000 in furniture, and regular $300 dinners out. That's taken out of context, my mother protested. Those were special occasions, or gifts, or... The cruise was for your anniversary. The furniture was because you wanted to redecorate. The dinners were routine. Mom, I'm not judging you for spending your own money. I'm asking you to acknowledge that while you were spending comfortably, I was the one paying for your foundation. Your mortgage, your property taxes, your HOA fees. All of it. My father stood up abruptly. So what, you want us to grovel? To thank you for doing what family does for each other? I want you to acknowledge reality, I said, standing as well, meeting his eyes. I want you to stop pretending you're victims of my cruelty when you're actually just facing the natural consequences of your own choices. We raised you, he said, his voice rising. We gave you everything. A home, education, opportunities. And this is how you repay us? You raised me to believe that being useful was the same as being loved, I said, my voice steady even as my heart pounded. You raised me to believe that asking for my needs was selfish. You raised me to carry weight silently and never complain. And when I finally couldn't carry it anymore, when I finally said I needed to save myself, you told me I'd ruined your lives. I didn't mean it like that, he said, but there was no conviction in it. Yes, you did. You meant exactly that. Because in your mind, I exist to solve your problems. My life, my money, my future, all of it is secondary to making sure you're comfortable. My mother was crying now, the kind of crying designed to make me feel guilty. It had worked for 29 years. Natalie, please. We'll lose the house. We'll lose everything. You'll sell the house, Simone interjected. The property is valued at $680,000. You owe $542,000. After selling costs, you'll walk away with approximately $95,000. That's enough for a down payment on a smaller home, or a rental property, or a financial reset. You're not losing everything. You're losing the lifestyle you've been living at your daughter's expense. We can't afford to move, my father said. Then you should have thought of that before buying a $4,000 sectional sofa, I said. Or taking a cruise. Or giving Trevor money for his business schemes. Or covering Dante's rent when he didn't feel like working. Your brothers needed help. And I didn't? My voice finally rose, just slightly. For 4 years, I needed help. I needed someone to ask how I was doing. I needed someone to notice that I stopped coming to family events because I couldn't afford gas. I needed someone to care that I was working myself into the ground to keep you afloat. But you didn't ask. Because as long as the money kept coming, I was fine. The room went quiet except for my mother's soft crying. Simone placed another document on the table. This is a formal statement from Natalie regarding the terms of this meeting. She will not be resuming financial responsibility for your mortgage. She will not be co-signing any future loans. She will not be providing financial assistance in any form. If you contact her to request money, she will consider it harassment and respond accordingly. You can't do this, my father said, but his voice had lost its authority. She already did, Simone replied. The loan release is finalized. What happens next is entirely up to you. My mother looked up at me, mascara streaking down her face. What about family? Doesn't that mean anything to you? I sat back down, suddenly tired. It means everything to me, Mom. That's why this hurts so much. Because I spent 4 years believing that if I just helped enough, sacrificed enough, stayed quiet enough, you'd finally see me as more than a resource. But you didn't. And at Christmas, when I needed you to just acknowledge what I'd done, Dad told me I'd ruined your lives. So yes, family means something to me. It just doesn't mean the same thing to us anymore. My father sat down heavily, looking older than I'd ever seen him. So that's it? You're just done with us? I'm done being your financial safety net, I corrected. Whether we have a relationship beyond that is up to you. But it won't include money. It won't include me fixing your problems. And it definitely won't include me accepting blame for consequences you created. Simone closed her portfolio. I think we're done here. Gerald, Ruth, you have until February 28th to refinance or arrange alternative solutions. Any further contact with Natalie regarding this matter should go through my office. Are we clear? They both nodded, numb. I stood, picking up my bag. My mother reached for my hand. Natalie, please. Don't leave like this. I looked down at her hand on mine, soft and small and desperate. I'm not leaving, Mom. I left 4 years ago when you asked me to put my life on hold for yours. I'm just finally making it official. I pulled my hand back gently and walked toward the door. Simone followed, pausing at the threshold. For what it's worth, she said to my parents, your daughter is one of the most generous, loyal, compassionate people I know. She gave you 4 years and $288,000. The fact that you're sitting here acting like she owes you more says everything about why she had to draw this line. We walked out, leaving them sitting in that conference room with nothing but their choices and a stack of papers proving what they'd taken for granted. In the elevator, Simone turned to me. You okay? I think so, I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I just felt clear, like fog had finally lifted. You did good in there, she said. You stated your truth without cruelty. That takes strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like survival. Sometimes they're the same thing. We walked out into the January cold, and I took a deep breath. Somewhere behind me, my parents were probably sitting in that conference room, trying to figure out their next move. But I wasn't looking back. I was looking forward, toward a life that was finally, completely, mine. I moved in March. Not far, just across town to a neighborhood I'd always admired but never thought I could afford. A 1-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor with windows that faced east, catching morning light that turned everything gold. It had a real kitchen with counter space, a bathroom with a tub deep enough to actually soak in, and a bedroom that fit more than just a bed. The rent was $1,200 a month. Less than a quarter of what I'd been paying for a house I never lived in. The first morning I woke up there, I lay in bed for 20 minutes just listening to the quiet. No anxiety about checking my bank account. No dread about emails asking for one more favor. Just peace, simple and complete. I made coffee in my new kitchen, the kind I actually liked instead of whatever was on sale, and sat by the window watching the city wake up. My phone was on silent. It had been for 2 months. My parents sold the house in February. They'd found a buyer quickly, a young couple with 2 kids who were thrilled about the neighborhood and the school district. The closing happened on February 23rd, 5 days before the bank's deadline. According to the brief email my mother sent, they walked away with $97,000 after all costs were settled. They bought a townhouse in a suburb 40 minutes away, smaller, older, but fully paid for with cash. No mortgage. No monthly payment hanging over them. Financially, they were better off than they'd been in years. The email from my mother had been short. We closed on the house. We're moving next week. I wish things were different. Love, Mom. I'd read it 3 times, waiting to feel something. Guilt, maybe. Sadness. Regret. Instead, I just felt relieved. Relieved that they'd found a solution. Relieved that it was over. Relieved that I could finally close that chapter without wondering if they'd be okay. They would be. They just wouldn't be comfortable in the way they'd grown accustomed to at my expense. I didn't respond to the email. Simone had advised me to maintain boundaries, and silence felt like the kindest boundary I could offer. Not cruel, just clear. Trevor sent one text in March, "Hope you're happy. Mom cries every day." I blocked him and didn't think about it again. Dante was different. He'd reached out in February, asking if we could meet for coffee. No agenda, he'd said. Just coffee. I'd agreed, cautiously. We met at a cafe near his apartment, a place with exposed brick and expensive lattes. He looked nervous when I arrived, fidgeting with his cup. "Thanks for coming," he said. "What did you want to talk about?" I wanted to apologize. I didn't know what you were dealing with. I didn't know any of it, and I should have. I should have noticed. You were busy with your own life, I said, not entirely without edge. That's not an excuse. You're my sister. I should have seen that you were struggling. He paused, choosing words carefully. After Christmas, after you told me everything, I asked Mom and Dad why they never said anything. Why they let me think everything was fine. What did they say? Dad said it wasn't my concern. Mom said they didn't want to burden me. He laughed bitterly. They didn't want to burden me, but they were fine burdening you. That's how it's always been, Dante. You and Trevor got to be people. I got to be useful. He nodded slowly. I'm starting to see that. And I hate it. I hate that I benefited from you being treated like that. You didn't ask for it. No, but I didn't question it either. I just took the help when it was offered, whether it was from you or them. I never asked what it cost. He met my eyes. I'm sorry, not really sorry. It wasn't absolution. It wasn't a fix. But it was honest, and honesty was more than I'd gotten from anyone else in my family. Thank you, I said. I appreciate that. Are we okay? Can we be okay? I don't know yet, I admitted. But I'm willing to try. As long as you understand that I'm different now. I'm not the sister who fixes things or covers for people or stays quiet to keep peace. I can't be that anymore. I don't want you to be, he said. I just want you to be my sister. Not my backup plan. We finished our coffee and talked about small things, his design work, my job, the weather. It wasn't deep, but it was real. When we left, he hugged me, and I let him. Can I call you sometime? He asked. Just to talk. Yeah, I said. You can call. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just a door left slightly open, which felt like enough. Work became different too. Without the constant financial pressure, I could actually focus on my job instead of just surviving it. I took on a new project in April, developing a financial literacy program for young people aging out of foster care. Teaching them about credit, debt, boundaries, how to recognize when someone is using them. I poured everything I'd learned into that program. Every mistake I'd made, every warning sign I'd ignored, every moment I'd confused being needed with being loved. I turned my pain into curriculum, my experience into protection for others. The program launched in May. Within 2 months, we had a waiting list. One of my students, a 19-year-old named Kira, stayed after class one day. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Why do you care so much about teaching us this stuff? Like, really care? I thought about that. Because I spent 4 years of my life learning these lessons the hard way. If I can help you avoid that, then maybe it wasn't wasted time. Maybe it was preparation for this. She nodded, processing. Did someone use you? Financially, I mean? Yes. My family. That's messed up. Family's supposed to protect you. Supposed to, I agreed. But sometimes the people who love you are also the people who hurt you the most. Not because they're evil, but because they've convinced themselves that your purpose is to serve theirs. What did you do? I walked away. I set boundaries. I chose myself. Was it hard? The hardest thing I've ever done, I admitted. But also the best. She smiled, small but genuine. Thanks. For telling me the truth. That's all I've got these days. Truth and boundaries. In June, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, my grandmother's elegant script on the envelope. Inside was a short note. Dearest Natalie. I've been thinking about you constantly. Your father tells me you've cut off contact with the family. I understand why, though he doesn't seem to. I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Not for what you did for them, but for finally choosing yourself. That takes courage most people never find. I'm 76 years old. I've lived long enough to learn that the people who call you selfish are usually the ones benefiting from your selflessness. Don't let them convince you otherwise. If you ever want to talk, my door is always open. No agenda, no guilt. Just a grandmother who loves you for who you are, not what you provide. With all my love, Nana. I cried reading it. Not from sadness, but from relief. Someone saw me. Someone understood. I called her that evening. We talked for an hour about everything and nothing. She told me about her garden, her book club, the new neighbors who played music too loud. I told her about my new apartment, my work program, the life I was building. "Are you happy?" she asked. I thought about it. I'm getting there. Some days are harder than others. But yeah, I think I'm happy. Or at least, I'm heading in that direction. "That's all any of us can ask for," she said. Direction toward happiness, not perfection of it. We started talking weekly after that. Sunday evenings, just before dinner. She became my connection to family without the toxicity, proof that blood relation didn't have to mean obligation. By August, I had $12,000 in savings. $12,000 that was mine, earned by me, kept by me. I opened a high-yield savings account and nicknamed it Future House Fund. I started looking at small condos, nothing fancy, just something that would be mine. Something I'd build equity in instead of funding someone else's comfort. I went on dates. Nothing serious, just coffee and walks and conversations with people who didn't know my history or my family drama. People who met me as I was now, not who I'd been trained to be. One man, a teacher named Marcus, asked me on our third date what I did for fun. I realized I didn't have an answer. For so long, survival had been my hobby. "I'm figuring that out," I said honestly. "What do you like to do?" "Hiking. Photography. I'm learning to play guitar pretty badly." He grinned. "Want to come with me to a trail next weekend?" No pressure. Just a walk. I went. It was easy, simple, uncomplicated. We hiked for 2 hours, took terrible photos of trees, and stopped for sandwiches at a place with picnic tables overlooking a lake. "This is nice," I said, meaning it. "Yeah," he agreed. "You seem lighter than when I first met you. More present." "I'm working on it. I spent a long time carrying weight that wasn't mine. I'm still learning what it feels like not to." "How's it feel so far?" I looked out at the water, the sun catching on the surface, everything bright and possible. "It feels like breathing," I said. In October, I got one final communication from my parents. A card, no return address, postmarked from their new town. Inside was a single sentence from my mother: "We miss you. The door is always open if you want to come home." There was no apology. No acknowledgement. No understanding of what home meant or why I couldn't return to it. I showed it to Simone over lunch. "Are you going to respond?" she asked. "No," I said. "They're inviting me back to a dynamic I've already left. Unless they're willing to acknowledge what happened and change the relationship, there's nothing to return to." That's very wise. How does it feel? Sad, I guess. But also clear. I don't miss them. I miss the idea of them, the parents I wanted them to be. But the reality? I don't miss that at all. I threw the card away and didn't think about it again. By December, exactly 1 year after that Christmas dinner, I was in a completely different place. Literally and figuratively. Different apartment. Different savings account balance. Different boundaries. Different understanding of my worth. I spent Christmas Eve with Simone and her family, loud and chaotic and warm in ways my family never was. I spent Christmas Day with my grandmother, cooking together in her small kitchen, laughing at old stories, building new memories. That night, alone in my apartment, I lit a candle on my windowsill and made myself a proper dinner. Roasted chicken, garlic potatoes, green beans with almonds. Food that tasted like care, not survival. I thought about that voicemail one final time. "You've ruined our lives." They'd wanted me broken. They'd wanted me desperate. They'd wanted me to come back apologizing. Instead, I'd walked away and built something they never gave me permission to build, a life. Not perfect. Not without scars. But mine. I raised my glass to my reflection in the dark window. To choosing myself, I said quietly. Every single time. The candle flickered. The city hummed below. And I sat there in my apartment, in my life, finally free. Because sometimes love means sacrifice. And sometimes it means knowing when to stop sacrificing and start living. I'd spent 29 years learning the first lesson. It took one voicemail and $288,000 to learn the second. But I'd learned it. And I'd never forget it again. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.